Live from this is
the Just End the Suffering podcast.
For the win. Got it! Oh! He broke his ankle. Follow me to freedom. Now ready for this.
Here's your host, Mike Phillips.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of the Just End the Suffering podcast, featuring New York sports talk from a long-suffering fan. I'm your host, Mike Phillips. Got a special bonus episode for you this week. New York Mets making big news today, and I mean massive, hot stove shattering news. They trade for Francisco Lindor, Carlos Carraso, give up Ahmed Rosario, Andres Jimenez, two prospects to basically shake up their whole lineup, the whole offseason. Big move. Requires an instant reaction podcast. We're going to be joined in just a bit by Martino Puccio, Will Schneiderhan, Met fans, both of them. We've talked to them on the podcast before. But we will get into this and break down what this means, what it could mean for us going forward, right after this.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York.
All right, we are back here on the podcast. Breaking news today, Francisco Lindor traded the Mets, broke the baseball internet. Join me today, talk about it on the podcast. First up, Martino Puccio is here. Martino, how are you?
Good. Top day in Mets history. One of the better days in Mets history for sure. This was, a long time coming. We knew from when Steve Cohen took over as owner of the Mets that we would be waiting for the first major move. There were a couple, solid moves with McCann and Trevor May, but this is the Uncle Stevie Cohen money has truly arrived type of deal that takes the whole league on notice, all of sports on notice, and it lets people know that, a team with another $30 million or so before the luxury tax just added the best shortstop in baseball on top of already a talented roster. So this is a great day. Probably my favorite day outside of the Cohen sale and the pennant, probably since the Beltran signing.
Yeah.
And I think for sure that it's probably the Johan trade. The Johan trade, because we didn't know what was going to happen yet with the recession and the whole Bernie Madoff thing. We thought Johan was like the final piece for the World Series, but this one is for sure, because now we know there's more clarity with the financial situation, farm system, who they hired in general. And it's not the Wilpons, it goes without saying.
Definitely goes without saying. Also with me, I talked to him earlier this week. We talked about the Jets. Now we're talking about the Mets. Will Schneiderhan. Will, how are you?
Doing well. You can't not be doing well today. Well, I guess you could, but if you're a Mets fan, you're doing just fine.
If you're a Mets fan, you are friggin' giddy right now. I mean, obviously, news broke earlier today. Jeff Passan was the first report that they were deep in this trade. Deal gets done, and this literally just came out of left field, man. I mean, you guys are talking about this. We have a group text called Cohen Money where we just most talk about the Mets. Sometimes we complain about the Jets, but when this came out, I'm like, no way this is actually happening. And then once you see it happen, this is like honestly the biggest trade this franchise has made since Mike Piazza.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a clear signal to the fan base that, it's not the Mookie Betts piece that it was for the Dodgers, where they just needed, one more thing and then it's a fully operational Death Star. This is kind of just like, the main cog in all of this. You have DeGrom as your best pitcher, your ace. You have a really good staff. And again, speaking of pitching, you don't even mention Cookie Carrasco. I forgot, that's just a really solid pitcher, because if you look at it at the end of the day, his upside is the number 2 on the staff. Like, he pitches his best. You could argue Syndergaard, but that's off of Tommy John, and he's had injury issues. But, Carlos Carrasco looked fine last year, like really good, pitching sub 3 ERA. You can only take away so much in a 60-game season. But if you look at all the other years in his career in recent years since 2014, only down years 2019. In 2019, he's come back from cancer. So there's not really like anything that you could point to there that's saying, oh, like we don't like him in the long term. Guys pitch better, deeper into their careers now. He hasn't thrown that many innings. He has shown he's been healthy, and it's only $13 million. If he's going to be better than, Marcus Stroman, who's getting around, what was it, the 18 and change, right, for the qualifying offer?
Yeah, 18.6.
Yeah, 18.6. So you're getting, a few million cheaper, and then on top of that, they're team options. So it's not there's nothing that hurts them there in this on top of what they gave up. So I don't see any downside to any part of this trade for them.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the return. I'm looking at this return when first, and I'm like thinking, okay, we're getting both of these guys. How much are we giving up here? Because, top of the line shortstop, contract year, quality pitcher, but saves us from spending money on Jake Odorizzi. And then you look at the returns, Ahmed Rosario, Andres Jimenez, who are both redundant at that point if you have Lindor. Then you look at the two prospects, Josh Wolf and Isaiah Green. They're like good prospects, top 10 in the Mets system. But, Will, I think it's awesome trade. That Sandy is the anti-Brody. He knows how to protect his top guys, where Brody just gets rid of everybody for whatever he can sell it for.
Yeah, there's a difference in the way Sandy operates, where he's methodical, he's really thought out, and Van Wagenen he was too anxious. Obviously, the role was too big for like his qualifications, and it's just night and day difference between the two. And I mean, this was just like a Sandy trade through and through, like we saw in the past. Jay Bruce, when he traded for Jay Bruce, I know Bruce didn't really play well after that trade, but you traded Dilson Herrera, and Herrera hasn't panned out. Cespedes trade, I know like that didn't end well between organization and player, but for what we traded at the time and where we went after we got Cespedes, it was fantastic. And now it's just, this reminds me of the Betts trade in a sense. I don't think they're the same caliber player. Maybe, Betts is a step above Lindor. I think that's fair to say. And but still, it was like you had a team that was backed in the corner. They wanted to get rid of a guy. They want to get rid of arguably the best player at the position in the sport. And it kind of sucks when you see like a guy like prospects like Ahmed Rosario flare out, but that's part of baseball. And I do hope that he goes to Cleveland and kind of finds himself, because I still think he's a talented player. But yeah, the trade itself for the Mets, you got the best shortstop in baseball, like Martino said, a super dynamic player, someone who I'm sure like Betts with the Dodgers, how they got that deal done. That'll happen here. And, hopefully he's playing shortstop for the next like 10 years. I'm down for that.
Yeah, ideally next 10 years. I signed for one more year, but this deal gives them a top 5 player in baseball right now. He's going to be the core of their lineup, going to be right in the middle of that order with Pete Alonso and Michael Conforto and Dom Smith and all of that. And I think it's interesting because I was listening to the press conference today and with Sandy also and Jared Porter at 3 o'clock, and they were talking like, we're not done yet. And Sandy at the quote of the day said, like, we're pretty hungry over here. So, I mean, I think you guys can both agree with me, right? Like, I think we're out on Bauer, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're definitely out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's no way, unless he does this weirdo thing that he likes what the Mets are doing so much and he spurns people for like 18 million and he's not commanding the 36 to 40 that he wanted. And he's, because he's that kind of peculiar guy who's like 1 year deals. But then he he's commanding 40 million. So like, it's tough to read on him, but
yeah,
it's done.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving on from him.
Yeah, I mean, well, plus, I mean, like, there is incentive for him to take a 1 year deal, because I know he said famously that he will let himself get paintballed in the junk if he takes more than a multi-year contract. But I don't think he's taking a 1 year deal for less than like $35 million. There's no way that Mets are giving him that.
Well, not after after the season, just wants Cy Young. It would be smart. Like, he's literally, there's no way he would take a 1 year deal. Like, no way. He's justified in taking the highest offer for the longest term. After that season he just had, it's like, that's just what you have to do, isn't it?
Yeah. I think also for me, Martin, I think it's also nice that you don't have to play the Trevor Mauer mind games on Twitter of like, Oh, what is he doing now? What's he saying in this video? Now they can say we have enough pitching. We don't need to go add a top tier guy.
No, you don't. You don't even, it's funny because Carrasco, at his peak season, he's had more quality seasons than Bauer has too, and it's not like Bauer is like spring chicken. The guy is like on the better side of, on the worst side of 30 now, or approaching it. So it's, there's a lot more question marks there with Carrasco. Some of those have been already answered, especially the fact that his best season wasn't in a 60 game sample size.
Yes.
And these guys were on the same staff at one point as well. And Carrasco, at that point it was Kluber was the guy. And this also, it opens up the other avenues where, now you're not really worrying that much about the rotation. If you can get one more arm in there. But this is just, you could add your Brad Hand. They could essentially I think there's a path where if they really tried to, they could get Hendricks and try Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field. I think that's a scenario in which they'll look down that path. I'm not saying it's likely because JBJ will be coveted just simply purely for his defense. And, on the Springer front too is fascinating with center field because, you're not even tied to, competition against like 5 other teams. It's still just the Blue Jays.
Yep.
And even then they've been lowballing reportedly. So all you have to do is come with an offer that's like, substantially better overall, say like 20 million in general in total for like the length of the deal. They could do 5 years still. They could still give up that. There's more money coming off the books next year. What you essentially did was, fill up the whole 24 million that was going to go to Cano. And on top of it, it's, a few extra million with the Carrasco because Lindor's in the high teens. Carrasco's around 13 million. Like it's a home run. And this was the advantageous market that they were talking about. And again, to the prospect thing, you keep your blue chip prospects and they're 2 guys like Rosario. He had this season or next, guys. Otherwise, he wasn't going to be a coveted piece. He's just kind of like that filler prospect, quote unquote, at the end of the deal to just, fill it up and be like, okay, well, we got like a 20% chance or whatever of Rosario even scratching some of the potential that he has. Like we were just like the guy couldn't get a walk last year. And it's kind of like, enough is enough at this point. Jimenez, we could have sold high on him right now. Like, we don't know if we could have just saw the best of Andres Jimenez, in a shortened season where not too many pitchers have that many information on them. And the guys that are pitching, are, the Red Sox series, like who were half those guys? They were pulling them off the streets. So there's really not much to take away. Wolf and Green aren't even, Sandy guys too. Sandy hasn't lost a trade since he's been with the Mets.
No, he hasn't.
It's continued and it's continuing that way. So, and it also keeps your options open just in case you want to make another trade where you don't essentially want Nimmo. You don't want to keep JD Davis, like your options are still open. You're not, there's a lot of flexibility here.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I know we're divided on what to do with it because I feel like I'm more in your camp where, like, hey, let's spread the wealth around. Let's get a couple of guys here. Let's add another reliever. Let's add, Jackie Bradley Jr. Let's go for the, upside at the Corey Kluber, James Paxton, give ourselves a chance at maybe, like if they're healthy, they become a 2-star. If not, they're a 5. It's not a big deal. But Will is still all aboard the Springer train. So, Will, tell me why.
Well, it's basically just determining if you want to do that or not at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
it's not like in prior years where you're just kind of like, okay, we can only look at Kluber because we won't pay for this and that. It's like, I'm fine with either way. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, do we just want to go into the luxury and get George Springer, or do we just play it more safe and play the long game, which like I get because you got some extensions that are coming up and so on. But I just think you in this market, like I don't really necessarily think Springer's going to get the contract terms that he wants. It's dollar amount wise, but just like take advantage of it, man. And Springer is fantastic. He's still going to play center field for at least 3 seasons. And then, you're probably going to have to eat it at the back end of that contract, but most contracts tend to be like that. But again, yeah, if you want to get JBJ, just to be out there and pick everything off. The dude's one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball. I'm fine with that too. I just think you're juggling a little bit with like Nimmo and and JBJ, daily lineup stuff where like you get George Springer, you're getting everything in one guy right there. But yeah, I do also think like you're going to be able to get Kluber or a Paxton, I think, for significantly less than maybe some are assuming. I do not believe that. I mean, 1-year deal for what? What's the dollar amount you're thinking on that? Like $4 million? I can't imagine he touches double digits. It's just no, they're not healthy enough.
It's probably like 4 or 5 with like a incentives thrown in there, but like how many starts they make and innings pitched and stuff like that. Bring you up to like probably get them a chance to get up to like 11 or 12 if they're fully healthy.
Very true. Yeah. But so, I mean, that's definitely, I would like to see them kind of roll the dice on there. But yeah, George Springer, I just think like one of the big, and I know culture is like a big, like cliche buzzword in sports, but man, you just go put George Springer and Francisco Lindor in a locker room with already guys like Michael Conforto and Pete Alonso and Dom Smith. I mean, I really think if you're trying to mold a team with talent, leadership, you go and do that and you kind of round it out. And obviously it's easier said than done. And talking about spending other people's money is always very easy. But yeah, I would love to see them go and get George Springer and just really up the middle, solidify a lot of the defensive issues that this team has had in the past.
Yeah, the way I see it is sort of like George Springer is like you're going for the kill. You're going for like, okay, we want to win in 2021. Here's the best guy that fits our biggest need. Let's go do it. But there are other things to consider here, including the fact that they only have about $27.5 million left under the luxury tax. And Steve Cohen has gone on the record saying, we don't want to go over this year. We want long-term flexibility. So it feels like a case where, A, they want the number to be right, where they're not going to overpay for George Springer. And B, it's like, this might be a situation where, we're trying to like make a trade and offload a little money to give yourself room to play. Because Andy Martino said earlier on SNY that, like, you know what, most of these teams, the Mets want to have like $5 to $10 million under the luxury tax in case, something happens during the season. All of a sudden, oh, we need a left fielder. We can go get one. Not be completely pressed against the tax. So I think it's interesting. I think you can look at things like maybe you try and dump Juris Familia for something and hopefully get something out of it. I've heard
you're going to have to attach something to it. You're going to have to probably look at, like, it's difficult though, right? Like, because teams aren't even willing to pay certain relievers like $9-10 million a year is too expensive. Like Familia's at 11.
Yeah,
that's kind of, that's hard to make a team bite. You got to give them something decent. So that's the only thing that will suck about it. But I'm on board. Like, who's the best player you would attach with Familia in order to bring in somebody like, say, the Mets can only get George Springer in hand or a Hendricks, hypothetically. Like, who's the best player you're attaching with Familia, prospect or 25-man roster-wise? Like, it's like, are you willing to depart with JD Davis on top of Familia to go and potentially bring in those guys? Because I would say yes, to be honest with you. I would definitely consider that. Like, if you tell me I can get George Springer and Brad Hand in here and I have to dump JD Davis with Familia, I'd probably do it.
Well, how many years does Familia have? 1 or 2 left?
One.
It's just this. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. That makes it a little easier. I mean, if you, yeah. I'm just thinking, like, I truthfully think they're going to get a little closer to that tax. Like, I for a year, if it's a year, you know what I'm trying to, for a first-time offender hitting that tax, I don't necessarily, I'm not going to tell you I know exactly what it is, but I don't think it's that much. And if you're telling me you need to dip into that as a first-time offender one time in order to get the likes of a George Springer, a Brad Hand, a Hendricks, the names we have said, then I mean,
you get $36 million off the books from Stroman, Familia, and Betances alone. That's not even resolving the Cano situation. That'll probably, figure itself out eventually. There's going to be some sort of buyout or maybe something within his, contract after testing positive twice. Like, there's a lot of flexibility. And then on top of it, don't forget the James McCann front part of the contract is cheaper. It's $8 million for the first 2. So again, there's something there. I personally think whether it's Springer or Bradley, I'm almost more confident in a Hand and or Hendricks showing up. I think that's what's next. I think the center thing can drag out the rest of this month. I truly do, because if it's just the Blue Jays, then we just, call up Springer's agent and say, okay, we want to resolve the relief pitcher market, because that's kind of like a thing with
That'll
I
move.
believe it was Tranian.
Yeah. Try
that
and sign.
re-signed with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's more dominoes.
I think Paston suggested that he was on the K show and he was saying basically what's happening is like it's literally the Mets and the Blue Jays, like in the Lindor for Springer, where what it came down to was like the Mets just did it. You know what I mean? Like it's that simple. Where I'm sure that's what's going to happen with Springer, like you said, Martino. They're just going to like one of these teams is just going to do it. Where you can just wait. I don't like he's the best in his position on the market. You kind of know where the value is. So it's not like if Jackie Bradley Jr. was signed before Springer, that's necessarily going to affect Springer's market value. So I do think that that's going to take a little bit longer. And it sounds like Sandy's like really into Brad Hand. He made the comment like right off the cuff about him where like, I think that's just inevitable.
I think it's a lock. I think he's going to be here probably within a week and a half.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think in terms of Springer, also the thing that you have to consider with that is not even just going over the luxury tax this year. It's just like, as Sandy said before, even Steve Cohen says they want to build a sustainable winner. And obviously you're locking him in for long-term money. You got to pay Lindor because obviously you're not giving up all that stuff to let him walk after a year. You're going to have to pay Michael Conforto. You're going to have to pay Syndergaard if he comes back well. Jake's going to opt out after 22. You're going to have to pay him long-term. So the question is, like, what number do they feel comfortable giving George Springer? Or at what point do they say, you know what, Toronto not going to have him, we'll just go get JBJ for a year and then figure it out?
Absolutely. And that's just, hey, that's what it's going to come down to for sure. But that's that you got to tie up a lot of money if you bring him in, which makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, I can't project what's going to happen in the future, those contracts, those players and so on, so it's one of those things where you mentioned it already way before, Phillips, where they're basically going to, if they do Springer, you're basically determining like, all right, let's just go and try to get one right away.
Yeah, basically, I think that's it. And I think let's wrap this little instant reaction up here. We'll go around the horn here quick. Martino, the next moves to the Mets are what?
I would say for the main roster, it'd probably be Brad Hand. I really do think that. I think knowing what the price is for him now and just these other relievers, they can get him in for a little less than the 10, right? Because they have that, like the Indians weren't willing to pay 10. I don't see a team going over that that needs it. So I think that'll be that. And Porter was talking about shoring up through the middle. So I think it's a guarantee now that it'll be JBJ or Springer. But the first move will tell you what the others are going to be. Obviously, I mean, that's easier said than done. But if you see Hand signed for like 2 for $18 or something like that, then I still think the door for Springer is slightly open. I think there's a potential there. And I wouldn't be, surprised with all the reports that they might dump a guy in a trade. I think that's possible.
Yeah.
We might have to, does anyone know when we're finding out more about the guarantee of the DH? Because I know we saw that it's the only thing they're bringing back is a minimum 3 batters per appearance. But I was watching today on MLB Network. I don't know if you guys were, they were thinking like, DH is still not completely out of the question. And now if DH is, not out of the question, then I don't know. Then I think everything's on the table, to be honest with you. Then they'd be more okay with dumping a JD Davis or sorts, because right now they're forced to play Dom Smith and left. Yeah. And then where is like Nimmo going? Like there's guys that don't have a position right now. So they have to figure that out first before what they do in center field, right? Because you can't sign a center fielder before knowing what the DH situation is. Yeah. Then like if there's no DH, you sign Springer, Smith plays where? You're sitting Pete. Like how often are you sitting Pete? Are you going to trade Nimmo at that point, or are you keeping him in left field? Like I think there's just so many other question marks that you open up with that situation. So I'll go with Brad Hand.
Yeah, I think that one is. I think it's not as hard he'll make it out. I think it's like basically like Nimmo, Dom, and Pete all play 4 games a week, and Smith plays 2 at first base and 2 in left field. I think that's the way it ends up being in that case. That's how I think they do it.
It's not the worst for 1 year. I could tolerate it for a year. Yeah, but long term, it's gonna have to be thought hard.
Yeah, and here's one that I was thinking about because I saw that the Mets were also poking around Chris Bryant in trade rumors. What do you think about like dump the Familia money? J.D. Davis over the Cubs for Bryant.
You're gonna have to give Nimmo, I think.
When I was reading that though, it really I didn't understand. I couldn't get the indication. I thought that was like beforehand, right? Like that,
Yeah.
or it's not beforehand.
It was also Nightingale, yeah. Before the Lindor trade, people were saying like that's when the report was coming out because Nightingale had it.
But it's funny you bring it because like I do actually think that trade is like what Martino suggested. Like you could do that. I don't think the Cubs to me are just trying to like get rid of guys. And I mean, I don't know what they're doing.
If I'm trading for a guy now, I'll be honest with you, I'd rather Luis Castillo.
From the Reds.
Probably like that's the only guy I'm willing to trade for a major league guy right now.
You're dipping in that top 6 prospects. You're going for Luis Castillo.
Yeah, he's a pitcher, obviously younger control. Or did he sign a deal? Or is he's still on club control, right? He doesn't have a term contract. Yeah, I don't know. Bryant's like kind of one of those like MLB The Show trades. I feel like like I don't know. I who knows?
He's gonna cost like north of 200, and that's not something I want, especially when you have the looming extensions.
No,
resign. It's just, and he's injury prone, man. It's just there's a lot of things with Chris Bryant that I'm kind of not on board with.
Yeah,
that's just me.
Yeah, Will, what is your next move for the Mets? What do you think they're going to do following this?
I do think it's going to be like Brad Hand or Liam Hendricks, but more towards Brad Hand. I do feel like, though, like just kind of going off like what we've been talking about, I would not be surprised if they try to get an extension done with
Conforto.
So yeah, just because I feel like it just benefits them so much and it helps them navigate this offseason. You know what I mean? Like we keep talking about like how we don't want, if they sign this guy, you got to be careful because extension. Like it only benefits them obviously to get it done. And I would be interested to see how far that goes this offseason.
Munson Alonso one. Because I don't know if they do like an Albies or Acuna extension.
Yeah, because it does benefit them too. I mean, all those contracts are usually just like, I mean, that Acuna deal is like highway robbery. You know what I mean? Like what is it, 200 million they're paying him, and he's like literally a top 5.
Did it even hit 200?
I don't think
I thought it was like a little bit below.
I might have. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to look up the deal. I mean, I remember seeing it. I'm like, there's no way that they gave him that little money because this is just like highway robbery with what they gave him because the money that they saved on him and Albies basically allowed them to re-sign Freddie Freeman, which is pretty nuts.
Albies was like 40 million and Acuna got 8 years for 100. So it was half of what like they, which is good leverage. It was good leverage for them, but I don't see it getting done. An Alonso thing. I think it's going to be Noah. Got to see how he looks.
Conforto first.
Conforto.
Yeah.
It's Conforto. Yeah, it's Conforto first, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's the other thing you have to consider with the Springer thing. It's like you're just paying Springer and you're paying Lindor. At that point, do you have like enough long-term wheels to re-up Conforto if it's not the right number for Springer? That's the one thing you have to consider here.
Absolutely. No, and like no joke. Like that's just it's easy. You got to keep the money for Conforto. The dude's just. Oh, man, he's so good.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Brad Hand is probably the next move, but I will also throw out there, I think they're going to be sniffing around that market for that, like one of those buy low pitchers who can give them like extra arms in the back of the rotation. Because right now, the Met rotation, you have either Steven Matz or Seth Lugo, and you can make your bullpen better by taking Lugo out of the mix for sure and leaving Matz as sort of an extra guy. I think you go for one of those guys like your James Paxton's or your Corey Kluber's and say, hey, come on in here, be an extra guy. And we saw what happened with them last year where they were just ran out of pitchers at one point. We're converting guys out of the bullpen in the middle of the year and we're starting freaking Ariel Gerardo in Baltimore because they had no arms. So I think they're going to learn that lesson. They're going to go get another starting pitcher. That's my guess.
Yeah, low risk, high reward with a guy like Corey Kluber, Paxton. That's kind of an easy one too, in my opinion. Dependent upon, of course, aren't they going and watching the workouts this week or next week or something like that? I think I saw something like that about that. But yeah, I think that's an easy grab too. That can, my God, you get a guy. If you get Kluber who's even like 70% of what he used to be, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the difference also with the Mets is like this last offseason, that would have been their move. They would have gone and signed Corey Kluber, this kind of said, look, if he's great, if he's healthy, he's our number 2 starter. And not mentioning the complete risk of downside here, where here you'd hate him to be the 5, where they would just hope he's the 2.
It's a new day. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Like I'm living in this now. Like it's just time, and I'm so happy that Steve Cohen and just Sandy Alderson and Porter and everyone's just it's awesome, man. I'm excited just to see what's going on. Being a Mets fan's fun, and I can't wait for the season to start. Like it's just really optimistic about what's going on. And I mean, like Martino said in the opening of this, like I was super young with Piazza, so I admittedly really do not remember that. But Beltran and Johan were like the 2 guys that I remember, and this trumps that. Like that, I think this is even bigger. Again, I was young with Johan, so I didn't really understand the World Series implications and so on that was going on with that. But now it's like this is like the biggest trade I've ever really witnessed as a Mets fan.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it here. I just wanted to put it out there to the audience here. This is sort of like a backdoor pilot. Will, Martino, and I are working on a new Mets-only podcast called Cohen Money based off of our group chat where we'll talk about the Mets probably like once a week. We're going to aim for a proper launch in spring training. But with the Lindor news, we figured, hey, put this out here, be a test, see what people think. Right, Martino?
Sorry, I was on mute. Damn thing. This was just a pilot. We've been talking about this for weeks now. So finally, this was the perfect day to do it. Everyone was free for it. So yeah, there's more exciting times ahead, and I'm sure we'll talk and discuss as more things happen. Hopefully they figure out how many games are going to be played, because in reality, we're really not far away from pitchers and catchers reporting, or the usual time that they do report anyway. So I'm definitely looking forward to everything. It's an exciting time. And listen, baseball, anything can happen, in my opinion, if you just make the playoffs. The Mets have a playoff caliber team. They get in there, anything can happen. Like Dodgers, they did win this World Series, but let's not forget, like opposed to, making the World Series back-to-back times, they have lost in the divisional series. So it's not like this isn't the late 90s Yankees that they're dealing with out there. Padres, too, they have some injuries. It's not a very difficult National League. It's top heavy, but I think there's some serious, potential here.
Yeah, plus, as Met fans, we are due to get prime Jacob deGrom in the playoffs again. We have not seen deGrom pitch in the playoffs since 2015.
And he wasn't even at his best then, right?
No.
I mean, I would love to see this version of deGrom just mowing guys down and with a Pack City feel. I can't wait back too. Yeah, man. He's probably the one guy. I hope when he heard that they got Lindor, he just like cracked a cold one and kicked back and put a smile on his face, man. That guy deserves it.
Yeah, he does. Let's wrap it up here. Thanks, guys, for hopping on. I appreciate it. We'll do some social media plugs. Martino, people follow you on Twitter if they want to keep what you're up to.
You could just follow me at Martino Puccio, soccer stuff, tons of basketball as well, because we're in full fling with that right now. And obviously baseball, and then whatever the Jets do, maybe, how crazy would it be? I just want to get this out there just in case the 1% it does happen. If the Jets were to manage to trade for Deshaun Watson, we Mets and Jets fans get Lindor and Watson in the span of days, but that won't happen. I just wanted to put it out there just in case,
Yeah,
just so we had the soundbite.
Yeah, the soundbite's out there. It's like it's more of a March thing than like a January 7th thing.
Yeah, it's probably a never thing, but it's worth a shot just putting it out there for the small chance. But it'll probably be Justin Fields, is my guess.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, how about you? How can people follow you and your podcast where you can talk about Deshaun Watson this week?
Well, I was going to say, it segues perfectly into follow me on Twitter at Will Schneiderhan, and I do a Jets podcast, try to get like an episode out every 1 or 2 weeks. It's been a little stagnant here as I've been like working more and so on, but yeah, I mean, I'd be talking about Deshaun Watson and Fields probably on there as we get closer to this draft. But yeah, and I do a little writing for Fansided, and there's a lot of NFL free agency and all that stuff is coming up closer or sooner than you think. So I'm going to be pumping out a lot of content for that. So yeah, just keep an eye on what I got going on there.
All right. Thanks again, guys.
Of course.
All right, and there you have it. That was our bonus instant reaction episode to the Francisco Lindor trade. A lot of fun stuff talking about the Mets. And the Mets are very exciting right now. A lot of fun times chatting about the Mets. If you want to get stuff like this podcast, including my look at what the Jets could do to put together a trade for Sean Watson, because as Will mentioned and Martino mentioned, he's unhappy in Houston right now. He might be asking for a trade. Jets could be well positioned to make a run at him. Check out the blog over at justendthesuffering.wordpress.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, all the usual suspects. Simply search for Just End the Suffering on all your favorite podcatchers. You can find all episodes there, including our episode earlier this week when we got ready for the NFL Wildcard Weekend. Spoke to Darryl Slater, did NFL picks, all that good stuff as well. You can also leave your feedback and star ratings on this podcast, even better going forward. You can also follow me on Twitter at mphillips331. That's MPHILIPS331. Forgot to mention the YouTube channel, Mike Phillips on YouTube. Individual conversations on the episodes will be up there as well. That's it for now. Coming up next week, we're going to have a Jet-specific episode. We are going to talk all about the NFL playoffs, some more, do more picks. Until then, it's a good day to be a Met fan.
Come on and meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really stopping the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side.